This is Channel 9 Eyewitness News at 6. Coverage you can count on.
Casey's verdict is in.
I will adjudge you to be not guilty.
And everyone has a reaction.
She got away with murder.
I'm very happy for Casey.
This was a dry bones case. Very, very difficult to prove.
But was it justice for Kaylee? And what happens next for Casey's lawyers, her parents, and Casey? After 3 years of buildup and 47 days of jury selection and trial, 12 people found Casey Anthony not guilty of murdering her little daughter, Kaylee.
And the reaction has been intense. Everybody seems to have something to say. We have the largest team of reporters gathering new information from the defense, prosecution, the Anthony family, and the crowds of spectators who watched it unfold. But we start with Channel 9's Kathleen Bellich, who knows what it was like in that courtroom when the verdict came down. Kathy, an incredible day.
It has been. It was tense. It was intense. The anticipation and raw emotion was building up under the surface and had to stay there under the chief judge's orders. I actually wobbled a little bit as I walked into the courtroom. And when the verdict was read, the not guilty verdicts were read, there was a stunned hush that fell over the courtroom. George and Cindy Anthony appeared to be tense as they waited with everyone else to hear what the jury had decided after almost 12 hours of deliberation. Casey walked in quickly and rushed to her seat. She and defense attorney Jose Baez chatted. Prosecutor Jeff Ashton sat with his eyes closed and breathed deeply. Then the clerk published the verdicts.
As to the charge of first-degree murder, verdict as to count 1. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
Not guilty of murder, manslaughter, or even child abuse. Casey broke down but tried to keep it under control. She was the only one who was allowed to react. Everyone else sat in stunned silence. George, who was accused of sexually abusing Casey and covering up Kaylee's drowning, appeared to be angry. Cindy smiled. The jurors showed no emotion as Chief Judge Belvin Perry asked each of them if the verdicts were true.
Juror number 6, were these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
One of the 7 women on the jury appeared to cry as she left the courtroom. Once the jury was gone, Casey wailed out loud and got a group hug from her defense team. Minutes later, she laughed as she was fingerprinted on the convictions for lying to detectives. She will be sentenced Thursday morning. Not one of the 12 jurors who acquitted Casey on the murder charges would answer our questions about how they came to that decision. 2 of the 5 alternates said they would talk to us, but not today. Reporting live at the Orange County Courthouse, Kathy Bellich, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Attorneys on both sides have spent 3 years working on this case, and Channel 9's Jeff Deal saw how each side reacted when that verdict was revealed. Jeff?
Bob, this was a celebration for the defense, just a burst of emotion after that verdict came down that really a lot of people say was a big surprise. For prosecutors, though, it was obvious disappointment. For attorneys, 3 years of investigation, legal battles, and 47 days of hard-fought trial came down to this.
As to count 1, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
Everyone remained still as that came down. Then, when this happened,
Charge of aggravated child abuse, verdict as to count 2. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
defense team member Dorothy Clay Sims took Casey's hand. Casey found not guilty of the 2 most serious charges. Prosecutors Jeff Ashton and Linda Drain verdict looked defeated. Casey Anthony hugged lead attorney Jose Baez, and Jeff Ashton just shook his head. The entire defense team broke into a group hug looking joyous. Dorothy Clay Sims made a gesture of celebration. Jose Baez smiled and laughed, talking to the rest of his team. A huge victory for all the attorneys. Meantime, prosecutors Frank George and Jeff Ashton simply sat at their table and shook hands. The defense attorneys Cheney Mason and Dorothy Clay Sims hugged. And the prosecution team left the courtroom in silence, a look of defeat on their faces. Afterward, Cheney Mason took the time to blast all of the defense team doubters. Jose Baez, on the other hand, pointed out there are no winners in a trial involving the death of a child. Reporting live at the Orange County Courthouse, Jeff Deal, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
As we mentioned, the jurors who determined Casey's fate are refusing to talk about their decision. Now the group of 12 may be heading back to Pinellas County as we speak after being away from home for 6 weeks straight. We're told some of the alternates may talk about the experience, but not right now. But there are plenty of court spectators talking tonight. Channel 9's Steve Barrett has spent the afternoon gauging the crowd's reaction at the courthouse. And Steve, there was a noticeable reaction there when the verdict came down.
And a huge crowd outside the courthouse here in this complex, Marty, but they had a big showing of deputies as well that did actually a really good job keeping the crowd under control. They were able to keep order, but some of the emotion could not be contained. The crowd that gathered for the Casey Anthony verdict called for something they cannot get, another try at justice for Kaylee Anthony.
The little girl. It's just wrong. It's a little life gone, and it's gone.
What about Kaylee? She did this to that baby. What about this? Those Anthonys better not be the grieving grandmothers anymore. This is not justice for their baby. Where are their heads?
As the news swept through the crowd, some gasped, others cried.
She got away with killing her daughter. It's crazy.
Thank you so much for talking to me and helping with the stories. Nice meeting you.
I can't believe this.
Hundreds of people remained for more than an hour. Some had spent time in the courtroom. Others simply came for the finale.
Where's justice for Kaylee?
There is none. The state of Florida doesn't believe in it, I believe. So you can toss your child on the side of the road and get away with it. That's what I feel like. It's unbelievable. No justice at all.
I don't know what planet that jury's on, but if she came out that door now, it's unbelievable. Bigger shock than O.J. Simpson. It's a bigger shock than O.J. Simpson. It's absolutely unbelievable. You can see the reaction.
And of course, with all that emotion, Sheriff Jerry Demings has asked for restraint by the public, no matter what they think about the verdict. Seems to be working, at least here at the courthouse. Really haven't seen any incidents, and as minute by minute goes by, the crowd just seems to dwindle. Reporting live at the Orange County Courthouse in Orlando, Steve Barrett, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
And we'll have to wait until later this week to learn Casey's sentence for what she was found guilty of, which was lying to law enforcement. But those 4 counts are only misdemeanors, and each carries only 1 year of jail. Casey has already spent about 3 years in jail and could spend less than another year in jail or even walk free by the end of this week. Sentencing is 9 o'clock Thursday morning.
Right now, Casey's defense team is celebrating the victory of a lifetime. And within the past hour, these photos captured the post-court celebration at Terrace 390 in downtown Orlando. And our cameras captured something else, a fight between a citizen and a security guard.
It was Shandy Mason grabbed his crotch.
Tempers flared outside the defense's victory party. An eyewitness also described what she saw inside.
We walked into the bank. We could hear commotion over there, and then you heard the cheers. And as we came around the corner, they were all holding up their champagne glasses to celebrate. So.
And what was your reaction when you saw that?
I mean, it's disappointing. It is a victory for them, but they're still a dead child.
This kind of case can make or break a lawyer's career.
3 years ago, Casey first got Jose Baez's name from another inmate at the jail. And today, what he said about his fellow attorneys and this emotionally charged case shows how much he's grown.
There are no winners in this case.
I would not request that Mr. Ashton be held in contempt because of his facial expressions. I also apologize for getting caught up in the moment as well and making those arguments. But I as well have my apologies to the court.
Channel 9's Greg Warmoth and legal expert Bill Schaefer have been watching Jose Baez and all the major courtroom players closely. And Bill, what do you think of Jose Baez now?
Well, he has graduated from a relatively unknown lawyer in Kissimmee to the national stage. He will now be considered as an A-list lawyer on the national stage. He will garner clients from the A-list of clients, and his future is certainly guaranteed. We saw what happened with Johnny Cochran after Johnny Cochran successfully defended O.J. Simpson. I think that's what we're going to see with Mr. Baez.
You commented throughout our coverage here, Bill, about the maturation process that's taken place over these 3 years and really over these these days in court as well, and you were impressed with a number of things, including his apology to Jeff Ashton and the way that he handled himself today regarding the verdict that went his way.
Yes, on a personal level, I've always found him to be a gentleman and a person with a sense of humor and quite charming. And he was revealed his character, I think, today in the statements that he made at the press conference when he did extend his thoughts to the prosecution and was gracious in his victory with the statements that he made.
From an unknown to the A-list. We'll have more on Jose Baez, of course, throughout the day and throughout the weeks, months, and likely years to come. For Bill Schaefer, I'm Greg Wormuth. Now back to the studio.
Thank you, gentlemen. The prosecution and the Orange County Sheriff are also reacting to the verdict, and they told Channel 9's Barrett Peterson while it was an extremely hard case to prosecute, they were always committed to justice for Kaylee. Barrett, how are they dealing with the verdict tonight?
Well, Bob, first a bit of a surprise. Since their news conference, we've confirmed that prosecutor Jeff Ashton plans to retire at the end of the week. Now, meantime, his boss had little to say about the verdict and certainly no criticism of it, and the actual prosecutors, including Ashton, said nothing. Despite a major trial defeat, State Attorney Lawson Lamar and Sheriff Jerry Demings stuck to their promise to speak about the verdict 1 hour after the jury came back. No excuses here, but from Lamar, a bit of an explanation.
This was a dry bones case. Very, very difficult to prove. The delay in recovering little Kaylee's remains worked to our considerable disadvantage.
Sheriff Demings had no reaction to the verdict, but did call on the public to respect it. Flanked by their team of prosecutors and detectives, neither man would answer reporters' questions.
We go forward to fight again tomorrow with great thanks to all the people that have helped us do our duty. This concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Mr. Lamar, did this jury make a major mistake? Did you make a major mistake? Mr. Lamar, are you disappointed that the jurors did not want to speak? So you have no idea what they saw or why they decided? That's true.
As for prosecutor Jeff Ashton, perhaps he'll speak about the verdict tomorrow. In the morning, he's scheduled to appear on The View right here on Channel 9. Reporting live from the Orange County Courthouse, Barrett Peterson, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
Oh, I can't believe this. To a child, that's disgusting. This is disgusting.
She took her life. She's a baby. She had her whole life. And she's going to walk free? I mean, come on. This is crazy. This is crazy.
Shock. Just shock.
Sky Witness 9 HD right now is over a restaurant near the Orange County Courthouse where Casey's defense team is celebrating. That's Terrace 390 down there on Livingston Street. And what's next for Casey's parents? Channel 9's been in touch with their lawyer. Plus, we're working to get more about the threat that's been made on their lives.
The verdict is in.
We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
Now we know Casey Anthony's fate, but what's next for her parents? George and Cindy Anthony have been the subject of public scrutiny for 3 years.
And we've gotten to know them very well. Their tempers, their tears, and their lives. Channel 9's George Spencer's in touch with their lawyer tonight. And George, how are they holding up, especially now that someone's threatened their lives?
Yeah, Bob, they are quite fearful, of course, and they are staying far from the public eye. A statement called this a fair verdict, a statement from the family, but it also decried the, quote, baseless allegations that Casey used in her defense. Publicly, George and Cindy Anthony betrayed very little. There was perhaps a slight smirk that moved across Cindy's face when the not guilty verdict was read, but privately we have learned they are very scared and they are in hiding right now because of the death threats against them. In this video, you can see George and Cindy Anthony leaving the courtroom early. They pretty much snuck out of their back row seat after hearing the verdict, but before Judge Perry dismissed the jury. We had expected a full press conference from them, especially after this not guilty verdict, but fear from those death threats canceled that. The Anthony's family attorney even gave us a copy of one of the warnings, which mentioned internet threats. He spoke to Channel 9's Mary Wynn specifically about the fear that the Anthonys feel for their personal safety.
Can you talk to me about the death threats?
Yeah, well, our office is receiving death threats, and they're also receiving death threats, and apparently it's making the rounds on the internet and everything else. But fortunately, the Orange County Sheriff's Office is on the job, and they've taken very good care of us.
Mark Lipman, the Anthony family attorney, would of course not tell us where George and Cindy Anthony are hiding out, how long they would be in hiding. The statement he sent out on their behalf does say he hopes this verdict will bring the family closure, even though it is very clear about the fact that they may never truly know how their little granddaughter, Kaylee Anthony, actually died. And perhaps most telling, we asked Lipman whether or not Casey would be back allowed in the family home at the end of all of this after her allegations. He declined to specifically answer that question. Reporting at the Orange County Courthouse, George Spencer, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
That'll be interesting to see. Thanks, George. This case has created chaos at the Anthony family home since it all began 3 years ago. This was the scene in August of 2008 when George Anthony clashed with protesters at the Anthony's home on Hope Spring Drive. But Channel 9's Mark Boyle is finding a very different scene tonight. Mark, what's going on?
Well, Marty, 3 years ago, there wasn't a large police presence in this neighborhood. Now there is. I want to show you down the road. That's the remains site where Kaylee's remains are found off of Suburban Drive. Over to the right, you see 3 sheriff's deputies on horseback. They're keeping control in this community. And you see some folks have started to show up. One man right there has a sign that says, "In the end, Kaylee is still gone." Kim Carpenter has lived in Casey Anthony's East Orange County neighborhood for several years and says this murder case has destroyed her community. From curious onlookers to protesters, she says she's over all of it.
It'll be really great when everything's taken care of and over and done with, and we have our neighborhood back, and we all join together again and have a nice neighborhood.
Folks who live along Hope Spring Drive near George and Cindy's home say they can't sell their homes. No one wants to buy around here because of all the publicity this area has attracted. We saw several homes for rent and for sale. Some have been on the market for years.
Homes, it's kind of brought the neighborhood down a lot. Really upset neighbors. There's nothing they can do. It's just come home every night. There's media, news media down the road, and people lined up, and it's kind of sad.
Meanwhile, this afternoon, hundreds of gawkers slowly drove by the site where Kaylee's remains were found off of Suburban Drive. Sheriff's deputies on horseback, helicopters, ATVs, and on the ground work to keep the peace. They are prepared for anything.
But when you have a lot of folks coming to gawk or take a look at things, it hinders our operation and the community's day-to-day activities to be able to travel to and forth.
And deputies on horseback, you see them right there, and on the ground say they will be in this community as long as they need to be. And just for those who are at home and wondering what the mood is like out here, it's very somber. For now, reporting live in East Orange County, Mark Boyle, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
More than 13,000 people have answered our Facebook poll question, do you think justice was served with a not guilty verdict in the Casey Anthony trial? 93% are saying no, 5% say yes, and 2% say they don't know.